At the Marseille port in the early morning, a light fog still hung over the sea. An international passenger ship was preparing to depart, beginning a multi-day journey that would take travelers back to Africa along the maritime route from Europe. Among the quiet stream of people boarding the ship, there was a black man dressed in a dark coat, without luxurious luggage and without any companions. He greeted the ticket inspector softly in French, with a warm smile. No one knew that he was Ibrahim Traoré, the president of Burkina Faso. He chose to travel by ship instead of plane, wishing to blend into the lives of ordinary people, quietly, without fanfare, and to observe the world in the simplest way possible. On the business deck, where there were private cabins and better service, he sat in cabin B-12, near a window overlooking the sea. A short while later, the ship's head attendant, a Frenchwoman named Meline, entered the business class section. She was busy handling a request from a French CEO traveling on the same journey, who had just become angry upon learning that all business class cabins were fully booked. She glanced at a black man dressed simply, sitting quietly with a cup of tea, showing no signs of elite status. Meline leaned toward a colleague and whispered, "That man looks out of place." She walked over and forced a polite smile. "Sir, may I see your ticket?" Ibrahim politely handed it to her. The ticket was correct. Right class, right cabin. But Meline returned a moment later, this time more direct. "We have an important passenger who needs a seat. Would you mind moving to the economy section? We will compensate you." He furrowed his brow slightly. "And why me?" "No personal reason, it's just more convenient for the other guest." "A guest more important than me?" he asked calmly. Meline didn't answer, but in her eyes and tone, the bias was unmistakable. When she continued by asking two other black passengers to vacate their cabins, Ibrahim stood up. "You're not selecting people based on their tickets, but on their skin color. That is discrimination." Meline looked briefly startled, but kept her cold exterior. "Sir, please don't cause trouble." But his steady, unwavering gaze silenced her. No one in the business class section spoke up, but every eye began to watch. Days later, the ship docked at Ouagadougou's port, where hundreds of people were waiting. The honor guard, a line of escort vehicles, and government ministers stood in formation on the dock. Days later, the ship docked at Ouagadougou's port, where hundreds of people were waiting. The honor guard, a line of escort vehicles, and government ministers stood in formation on the dock. Meline and the French CEO still had no idea what was happening, until a high-ranking officer boarded the ship, walked straight to cabin B-12, saluted sharply, and declared loudly, "Welcome home, President Ibrahim Traoré." The entire business cabin fell silent. Meline was stunned, unable to believe that the man she had looked down on was the head of state. Ibrahim said nothing. He stepped off the ship with dignity, greeted by the cheers of his people. Left behind on the ship, Meline and the French CEO were detained for questioning, charged with insulting a head of state and racial discrimination. During the interrogation, Meline choked back tears. "I didn't know he was the president." But the investigator simply replied, "You didn't need to know who he was. You only needed to treat him like a human being." The story spread across Africa and the world. Social media dubbed it a civilized unmasking, where human dignity was valued above all titles. From that moment forward, Ibrahim Traoré, the man in the old coat aboard the ship, was no longer just a president. He had become a symbol of an awakened Africa, one that would no longer be judged by appearances or by the gaze of those who once looked down on them.